Alright, so in this video, I'm gonna continue my kind of theme about mixing psychics, people with supernatural abilities, supposedly, and I'm gonna mix that in with science and technology, because there's definitely a connection there, okay? So I'm gonna be talking about that, and I'm gonna be talking about God's punishment for such things, okay? And how the Bible talks about it, and the prophecy in the Bible about some of these things, alright? So I have been studying on psychics a little bit, okay, and a very good time frame to study psychics would be the late 1800s and the early 1900s, okay, because that's when psychics were a very popular thing, okay. In the early 1900s, okay, psychics were they were very prevalent. It was like a fad, okay. They were using spirit boards. They were constantly talking to psychics. There was a psychic at every end of the neighborhood. Okay, there were psychics all over the place. It became a huge fad to talk to psychics. Okay, it was a new thing to those people at the time. Okay, it was a new thing. It was a new way to communicate. It was entertainment. Okay, most of the time, it sounds like it was just for entertainment. Okay, some people thought it was real. They were really taking the information seriously. Okay, but anyway, psychics were a very big problem in the early 1900s. Late 1800s, early 1900s, okay? They were everywhere, okay? It was a huge problem. It was a time of great distress when it comes to God, probably, okay? Okay, and I wanted to bring up something. Sometimes God uses another person to try to restrain it. And sometimes that person isn't even a Christian. Okay? And I want to bring up Houdini. Okay? I'm going to bring up the Houdini thing. Houdini was not religious at all. He was basically like an atheist. His father was Jewish, but he wasn't religiously Jewish. Okay? He didn't seem to have a religion. Okay? But sometimes God does use another person to restrain things. Houdini, absolutely. If you don't know who Houdini is, he was a magician. He was a sleight of hand magician. Okay, he would usually, make things disappear, rabbits out of a hat type of thing. He was. If you don't know who Houdini is, that's funny because he's like the most famous magician ever. Even to this day, they don't know how he did some of his tricks, which might be suspicious, but we'll get into that, okay? Anyway, he was a very famous guy, and he was one of the very first people who actually started telling people that these psychics were evil, which is, in my opinion, a good thing, okay? And that's the only, because sometimes it takes a famous person to get people to wake up to some of this stuff. Because even the presidents and stuff, even these leaders were all talking to psychics. Even Abraham Lincoln and his wife were into psychics, talking to mediums. They were terrible. Okay? Sometimes it takes a famous person to open your eyes to what's going on. Okay? And he was really, really, really against these psychics. Now, it's my opinion he was being kind of a hypocrite because he was using magic, but it was sleight of hand magic. It wasn't. It's possible that he was using real magic if you want to get weird about it, and he was just jealous of these women, but I don't think so. Okay, he hated them not because he thought they were evil, like they were demonic. He thought that they were just ripping people off. He just thought that they were fake. He didn't like them for a logical reason, not just spiritual reasons, okay? And which is very important. There are logical reasons why you should not talk to a medium or psychic. Because some of them probably are fake and just stealing your money and feeding you a bunch of bull, okay? Absolutely. Christians should use the logical and the spiritual reasons, okay? And anyway, he would try to do things to debunk them. Like, for example, if you go to a psychic or whoever, they might do knocking. They might, knock 3 times to answer a question or whatever. And he's kind of debunked some of these people. For example, some of these women, they're all women too, which is very important. Okay, that is creepy stuff right there. That's Whore of Babylon stuff. Okay. Anyway, they would knock. You know how they knock on things, but these women got really good at knocking with their knuckles from their toes. They would knock on the wood with their toe knuckles. They got really good at that. He kind of debunked them sometimes. And sometimes sometimes he couldn't though. Sometimes he could, sometimes he couldn't. I'm trying to be really fair here because I think that some of these psychics are real. Okay, they're false prophets. Okay, there's prophets from God and there's prophets in the Bible. They're communicating with the other side in a very bad way. Okay. Anyway, and something that's very I want to tie into here. Okay, so I think that's good. And Houdini died of a mysterious illness. Like he had some sort of stomach problem. He got some sort of stomach virus or something. And and the conspiracy theory is that some of these mediums that really were real, they killed him. Okay, they murdered him because he was very he made it his life's work to get rid of these guys. He was trying to make it illegal, and then which it did become illegal. A lot of the stuff did become illegal. I'll bring that up in a minute. Using psychics and stuff became very illegal after this for a while. Okay, I'll bring that up in a minute. But anyway, he died, and the conspiracy theory is that these psychics killed him. Okay, and that's even in voodoo. I heard that in voodoo. So sometimes I listen to Christians who come out of voodoo, okay, and they expose the demonic realm, okay, which is actually really important because I don't think Christians are allowed to go buy witchcraft books and read witchcraft books, okay, but I do get secondhand information from people who've come out of satanic stuff, okay. And voodoo, she says that they can literally murder people and kill people, but they look like they just died of a regular illness. So it's possible that he was murdered, or maybe it's just a coincidence. Okay, you can decide. Yeah. Anyway, and I wanted to bring up one more thing before I get back into it. There's a bunch of supernatural stuff going on during this time frame because these people were tapping into the spirit world a lot. Using Ouija boards were really popular, started to become very popular. Different ways to communicate with it. That they started punching holes into the spirit world, and all this happened during the Portugal miracle of the sun. Okay, and I don't think that any of that is a coincidence. Okay, that's why all of the supernatural stuff was happening, is because everyone was doing some very evil things. Okay. The Portugal miracle of the sun as well, I want to bring up, is those two kids died. It's because they were probably killed, okay? Just like Houdini was probably killed, okay? Because when people do evil stuff, other people die, okay? Alright. And I'm going to bring up the ectoplasm thing again. I already talked about ectoplasm in this video right here. I talked about ectoplasm in these two videos, okay? But I'm going to bring up again that ectoplasm was a thing. These mediums claim to be making a substance come out of their body. Okay, and it's the same thing with the Portugal miracle of the sun. They were experiencing ectoplasm, and I don't think it's a coincidence that all this was happening around the same time. Okay, ectoplasm is evil, and it can be in the Bible, but I will give that to you in a minute. Okay, but ectoplasm is super evil. Even yogis, people who do yoga. People who I'm talking about people who've been doing yoga for 20 years straight and they're deep into meditation. They said they experience a wet substance coming off their body. That's ectoplasm. It's evil. It's not good. It's not angel hair. It's not something coming from God. It's evil. And I do believe God makes a slight reference to it when it talks about in Ezekiel, the book of Ezekiel. God talks about the anointed cherub that covereth. He's talking about fallen beings, but he's talking about people too. He's talking about demons. He's talking about people though as well. Okay, and the anointed part is what I really want to focus on. It's because when you're anointed, you're covered with water and blood and oil. Okay, but this Bible reference is talking about the devil. Okay, and that's what these people are doing. They're claiming they're having oil and blood and water coming out of their bodies. They're anointed demonically, though. Okay, God does make a reference to probably this ectoplasm, but it's not just gonna say ectoplasm. Okay, because technically that stuff goes back to the beginning of time, and people are just name it different things. Because even if you study yoga and stuff like that, they have ectoplasm stuff, but they're not calling it ectoplasm. Okay, but God makes a reference to ectoplasm in many different ways, but one way is when he says when Satan and evil people are called anointed. Because when you're anointed with water, oil, and blood, and that's what these people are saying. Okay, these people who claim to have a substance leaking from their body, like the stigmata, like these yogis, like these witches, okay? It's all the same thing. It's evil, okay? It's not coming from God. This is not blood from Jesus. It's the demonic anointed cherub, okay? Fallen angel stuff. Okay, so there's lots of psychics and stuff, but it gets even crazier than that. There's something else I really want to talk about. So there's all these inventions came out at that time too. There was the telephone, the light bulb, the phonograph, the movie camera. There's the telescopes, really magnetized, really powerful telescopes. These guys were all inventing stuff. Tesla, okay? These guys were all inventing stuff. All this, there was like a awakening or something. There was a really crazy awakening when it comes to inventing things. But something that people are missing is all of these guys were talking and interacting with mediums. They were all into the occult. The guy, I'll just rephrase it in a very interesting way. The inventor of the radio, television, movie camera, light bulbs, telescopes, music records, okay, phonograph records. So all these inventions come from people who said they got their information from the spirit world. And I'm going to bring up one in specific, and I'm going to bring up Tesla real fast. Okay, so this guy has a really crazy story. He said he's the inventor of this Hale telescope, okay? And he said that an elf climbed into his window and told him how to build this telescope, or told him to talk to the Rockefellers to get money for this telescope. He got information from an elf, okay, that told him how to do this. That is, I know that sounds so crazy and so almost silly, but it's so weird because sometimes Baal, and what Baal looks like, sometimes he looks like an elf, okay? So, yeah, that's pretty scary. That's weird and scary, okay? Anyway, something else I want to bring up. It's very important because they said, out of the words out of their own mouth, they said these devices weren't just used to communicate with each other. They were used to communicate with spirits, okay? They were devices made to communicate with each other and spirits. That's how they got their information. That's what they said. And the reason why I have to say that is because, are you supposed to do that? Can you use science and technology to communicate with demons? Absolutely. Okay? People do that all the time. Ghost hunters use, the EMF detector. Okay? Yeah, that's not original. That's why these guys made those devices in the first place. Okay? Now, this is very important. This is talking... Now, is it a sin for you to use a radio or the telephone? No. Okay, it's not, because these guys didn't invent anything. They didn't invent radio waves. They didn't invent electromagnetism. They didn't invent light. Okay, they just found a way to capture it and use for people to use it. But it was usually used for evil, and that is obviously used to this day. Something that I also wanted to bring up is Tesla claimed over and over again that he got his information from studying the Bible. Okay, alright, I have to say that, because not everyone was just talking to psychics. They get information from the Bible, alright? And you get revelation from the Bible? Of course. And you can argue back and forth all day if Tesla was a real Christian or not. Okay, I'll maybe make a video about that later. But my point is, God gives you an alternative thing to use instead of talking to a psychic. And sometimes it's a machine, and not in a bad way either. Alright? Because it's not a sin for a Christian to go on the telephone, okay? Or go on the internet, alright? But this is my point I wanted to make. The video camera, the tape recorder, and the telephone, these things were purposely invented to communicate to the spirit world. That's why they were originally invented. Okay, yes, they got used to communicate with each other, but these guys purposely made these things on purpose to communicate with the spirit world. That's why they were made, okay? So, when you hear people making fun of people who say they see ghosts on their video camera, or they hear something on their radio...
Are you angry about what happened? Holy
like white noise, whatever, okay, they're not lying. Of course, that's scary and evil, but they're not lying, okay, because that's why these things were invented, all right? That's why they were invented. It's not original, okay? So saying that these things aren't communicating with the spirit world is a lie, okay? That's why they made them, all right? But another point I wanted to make, a very, very important point, is that what happened is these guys replaced psychics with these machines, okay? Instead of going to a psychic that could go out, that can communicate with spirits, they can see, hear, and see the spirit world, they just made machines to replace them. Do you understand what I'm saying? They bypassed the psychics and just like, well, we don't need a psychic anymore. We're just gonna use a machine to do it. That's my point, okay? But something that's even crazier, you guys, is that it happened again. It happened again, okay? And not all of it is evil either. I'll bring it up real fast. So psychics went down. It became illegal to use psychics. They became very illegal for logical reasons, because most of these people were just ripping people off, and people who were constantly on Ouija boards and talking to mediums, they were going crazy. They were doing crazy things like killing their whole family. They were leaving their husbands for no apparent reason because the Ouija board told them to. They started outlawing this stuff because the people who were on them all the time were losing their minds. They were doing crazy, evil things. They were drowning their babies, stuff like that. Okay, stuff you see now, by the way. Okay, my point is, these machines replaced psychics. Okay, and then it happened again because the psychics started making a comeback with the remote viewing version of psychics. Now I'll go into that in great detail probably in a later video. Long story short, the government started using psychics like in the 70s, 80s, 90s, okay, to communicate. They didn't use them to communicate with spirits. They didn't care about that stuff. They use psychics to do remote viewing. If you don't know what remote viewing is remote viewing is when these psychics claim that they can see and go into other places, like other countries, okay, and they can view other places without actually physically leaving their body, okay. And sometimes they would use psychics to locate people and locate bad people, okay? They like, I know where this person is. He's over here. Or, sometimes to this day they might use them a little bit, but they would use psychics to locate, missing people, okay? And this is so funny. This is so crazy. They got replaced by machines again. Okay, there's a reason why they stopped using psychics, because they just made machines to do to do remote viewing. Okay, they just invented, and it so happened because it's so crazy because it happened around the turn of the century again. Okay, they started using Google. Why use a psychic when you could just use Google Earth? Is it a sin to use Google Earth? No. It's not a sin to use Google Earth. No, you're not supposed to communicate with spirits, but you can use Google Earth. Why use a psychic when you could just use a drone to locate people? Okay. Alright? And the thing is, some of that stuff is a blessing from God. No, you're not allowed to use a psychic, but it's not a sin to use a helicopter with heat-seeking abilities to go find a missing person. Okay? You know what I mean? So why use a psychic when you can just use a heat-seeking missile? Okay? They got replaced by machines again. That is so crazy. Okay? Which is kind of like a blessing and a curse from God, because sometimes people still use machines to try to contact evil spirits and stuff. Like CERN and stuff is no good. No. Okay? It's reaching into the spirit world. Alright? And there's something else I want to point out. Okay, so these inventors literally said they made these machines for spirit transmissions. They were using these terms, okay? They were using terms like, yes, they admitted that these things were going into the spirit world. Okay, just because scientists and inventors change the wording doesn't mean it's not talking about the same thing. Just because they're saying you're going into the quantum realm and you're reaching into the other dimensions doesn't mean it still means spirit world. Okay? You going into the other dimensions is the spirit world. You going into the quantum realm is the spirit world. It's not different, it's the same. Okay? Just because people started changing the words doesn't mean it's not the same thing. Okay? Even these people invented the things, at least they said the correct wording, it's not to confuse you. Alright? And another thing. Also, another thing I want to point out is if you are on your internet all day long and you're watching TV all day long, it's not just for fun and entertainment, okay? You are in contact. Something is contacting you with you. You are in communion with something. Spirits and stuff are projecting things into your mind and soul, okay? And yes, some of that stuff is not always evil. You can go on the internet and study the Bible and stuff like that, okay? But don't think nothing is happening to you if you're watching movies 10 hours a day, or just listening to music, or all that stuff. That stuff is directly tied to the spirit world, so you better have the sanctity of Jesus Christ, and you better be protected by God, or you're going to turn into a crazy person. Just like these people who are contacting psychics all the time. You're going to become very unstable mentally and physically. Okay? Alright. So please think about this stuff, guys. And thank you.